Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be about me sharing you my preferred setup for street photography. What I will say is, first and foremost, is just because this is my preferred style of photography and my preferred setup doesn't necessarily mean this is what I think everyone should use, or this is the only kind of setup for street photography. I'm aware that everyone has their own preferences, their own style, their own unique taste. It's just generally down to subjective view, but this is just my own opinion. With that clarified, let's get into it. Trying to find your own style of photography nowadays on your preferred setup for your camera gear can be both enjoyable, but can also be quite daunting, based in fact, and pure in fact is the fact that there's so many options available out there. If you're someone who likes to go for maybe a wider angle lens, you maybe want to have that kind of distorted kind of feel, you could maybe go for an 18 to 55, 16mm. Or if you're someone who prefers, if you live in maybe a big city and you want to get that kind of big city feel, you could use a more focal point lens where it's more like a 85 or a 50 to 200mm lens. There is of course the 50mm lens, which it is common knowledge amongst photographers that the 50mm lens is the best budget lens for street photography due to its robustness, durability, and as I said, in the grand scheme of things, its relative inexpensiveness compared to other lenses. And for a while, the 50mm was my preferred lens for street photography. But that was up until maybe about just over 4 years ago, where I discovered the 35mm 1.4, and that has to this day been my preferred setup for street photography, is the 35mm 1.4 coupled with the Fujifilm X-T2. The reason I went for the 35mm and why I was drawn to it so much was that it did find me that perfect balance, and Marvel fans will know, be quoting Thanos at that, but it generally did find me that perfect in between. It wasn't too as wide angle as maybe the 18 to 55, but it also at the same time was not as punched in as the 50mm. It just found me that perfect middle ground for street photography that I felt, just again, only in my personal opinion, helped me really create the kind of portfolio and take the photos that I wanted to take. Another added benefit for me was with the 35mm from a more practical standpoint was that it was just so portable, lightweight and easy to carry around, which as a street photographer you're constantly moving from one location to the next, so the aim was for me to always as travel light as possible, and the 35mm is just a classic Fujifilm lens, light, compact and easy to carry around. Inevitably though, there is going to be some drawbacks to this. And the first and foremost, and probably the biggest one with the 35mm, is that it is quite more expensive, or it can be more expensive than its other counterpart lenses, much like the ones I mentioned earlier, particularly the 50mm, especially if you buy a new 35mm lens, which I did at the time, but certainly I've got my money's worth out of it, which is kind of safe in hindsight. But of course there are plenty of second-hand shops out there where you can buy one, like MPB is the obvious one. So if you are thinking about getting a 35mm but are not quite certain of it, I would definitely recommend you get a second-hand one and try it out for yourself before you spend extortionate amounts of money on a brand new one. Another drawback would be that, as with any other prime lens, that it is a fixed focal length. You cannot zoom in or zoom out, which can say at times you think maybe if I had just a little bit more of a zoom feature I could have got that certain shot, but for me that point at least is very much nitpicking, because of course you can always crop when you're editing your photos, but if you're someone like me who likes to get the perfect shot in camera right first, then maybe that could be an issue. But honestly, for me at least, the benefits vastly outweigh the negatives and drawbacks of the 35mm. I have had massive benefit and massive use out of the 35mm that has vastly helped shape my portfolio, helped me develop a better eye for photos, and it's just really helped me find my style. It's getting a bit cheesy, so I'll stop there. But yeah, that is it. That's just basically my interpretation and my setup for street photography. Keen to know what everyone else is, so if you have an alternative or if you like the same setup as me, let me know, and keen to hear everyone's comments. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time.